Good afternoon. Thank you for your attendance at our only board meeting of December. Good to see everyone here. I would entertain a motion to approve the order of agenda with the following changes. Staff Report 5C, the Dyslexia Task Force, will actually come first after we approve the agenda. So before number 3, we have a little kind of scheduling juggling. And we also have an HR addendum. Jim.
I move adoption of the agenda with those two additions.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the order of agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Augrey, you'll get us started.
Thank you. Tonight we have two representatives along with Patty Cummings, who is here for dual purposes, that are working with our Dyslexia Task Force. That task force has been in play for about the last year. It's a very complex topic. So there has been conversation over the last several years, and the two people that are coming tonight to share information with you really have taken it by the reins, asked some good questions, pulled a great group together. So tonight we have Rachel Chennis, who is in a new role this year, but she has worked with us in many roles over the past 10, 15 years, Rachel? Ooh. Rachel Chennis, currently, she is a special education coordinator. And we have Jen Sarr, who has been a classroom teacher. She's been a strategist, curriculum facilitator, and most currently, she is the K-12 MTSS coordinator. And they are here to share some work as well as some information, and then have time for questions regarding dyslexia. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you. As Rachel said, I'm Jen Sarr. I've been with the Fargo Schools for the past 18 years professionally, but I've been with Fargo Schools my entire life. I'm the daughter of 2 retired Fargo Public Schools teachers and a product of the district as well. So let's go ahead and get started. We want to dig right into just having an understanding about what is dyslexia. And as Rachel mentioned, it is very complex. Many components and areas that we need to think about. But let's start with a really simple definition of dyslexia. That first part of the word dyslexia, D-Y-S, really does mean difficulty with. So anytime you hear something that has that prefix, you know it's a difficulty with something. And what maybe you aren't as familiar with is that part, lexia. Lexia really means language. So dyslexia, when we put those pieces together, means difficulty with language. Most people, when they hear the word dyslexia, think about difficulty reading. And because language is very much associated with reading, it will for sure impact reading, but it is much bigger than just reading itself. So taking a look at some additional facts about dyslexia, it is a neurologically based difficulty, neurologically meaning of the brain. So everything, it has nothing to do with something somebody did or didn't do for someone else. It's all completely housed within the brain and is very often hereditary. So typically if you have a parent who is dyslexic, it is much more likely that those children will also have some characteristics of being dyslexic. People who are dyslexic have average to above average intelligence. They're very smart people. Dyslexia can be seen in varying degrees of severity. There can be, just like with anything, just like with having a cold, you can have a little cold or you can have a big cold. And dyslexia varies greatly in terms of severity as well. As we mentioned, dyslexia can interfere with the acquisition and the processing of language, and it's most often seen with those difficulties in receptive, how we receive language, and expressive, how we put language back out. So just jumping back a little bit to that brain piece, typically, as we've talked about, reading, writing, spelling, and handwriting is where we'll see those signs of dyslexia in people. But jumping back to the brain piece of it, there are 3 parts within the brain that are most commonly affected or involved when we talk about people who are dyslexic. The very front part is called the Broca's area, and that's where the articulation and trying to make sense of what we're doing, that's this part of the brain that's right behind the left temple. Then right behind it, up above the ear, is the auditory cortex. So auditory, we know that's where we hear things, where we take in language auditorily, where we hear ourselves doing reading, where we try to make sense of those pieces. And then just behind it, in the third part, just behind the ear, that's the visual cortex. So the pieces where we're looking at letters, looking at whole words, and again, trying to remember what sounds they make, when they're all put together, what that word makes. And in between the auditory and the visual is everything to do with memory. So once you hear it, once you see it, being able to remember it. People who are dyslexic, the auditory and the visual piece, aren't working like they ought to be working. They're trying to do all of their work from this front area, from the articulation area, which is why they have so much difficulty. So some statistics around dyslexia. 1 in 5 children are dyslexic. In a classroom of 20, which is very common in the Fargo Public Schools, that means 4 kids in that classroom are dyslexic, whether they've been identified as being dyslexic or they have characteristics of dyslexia. Of those people who have poor reading skills, 70 to 80% of them have those dyslexic-like characteristics. So when we talk about any children who struggle with reading, most of them have characteristics that are synonymous with dyslexia, whether they've been identified or not. Dyslexia affects the same percentage of males and females, boys and girls, as well as the same number of people from various ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds.
So let's start talking about warning signs, and at your table you will see a warning signs handout. We broke these down into just different categories in regards to developmental. So in preschool, it is common for us to see a delayed speech. And that's where the kids are not speaking or don't have words before 1 year old, but often won't speak at upwards to 3 years old or older. They might be switching sounds, like multisyllabic words would be biscotti or aminal. They might often stutter. They have consistent confusion with directionality. So left versus right, over versus under, before or after, and other directionality concepts. In regards to these warning signs, one in itself is not something that somebody would be concerned about, not even 2 in kind of a group. 3 or more, a teacher or a parent should start to kind of think, gosh, there's a handful of warning signs that we need to be looking at. Some more warning signs in preschool would be difficulty establishing a dominant hand, really not identifying a dominant hand until they're 7 or 8. And they might choose a hand for writing and a different hand for hitting the baseball or holding a hockey stick. So they really haven't really favored one or the other. Difficulty learning how to tie shoes, difficulty memorizing their phone number, address, or alphabet, and difficulty hearing or creating rhymes. Again, one in itself, not a huge concern. The more of these warning signs that you see, some concerns. So as we head into elementary school, some of the warning signs that we see are really that identifying of specific things, labeling, using the correct terminology, really that lack of vocabulary, calling words thingies or those things. They are messy or disorganized, so they might pile things up on each other. They don't know where to find things. If things are hidden behind something or covered up, they don't know where they're at. They're actually not there. Dysgraphia, just a struggle with handwriting. Unusual pencil grip, you might see them have a fist kind of grip, and it doesn't change. After redirection, like the pincer hold, they might go back to what they're comfortable with. Young children will often put their heads on their table and watch the pencil interact with a piece of paper and watch that happen. Writing is slow, laborious, and it's not automatic. It's very tedious, and we're going to give you a little preview of how that feels today. A child writes letters usually starting at an odd point from the bottom up, even though they've been taught over and over again a specific starting point using our Handwriting Without Tears curriculum. Copying off the board can be very difficult. Actually, copying off the board can be difficult, and even near point copying is very difficult. They will usually copy one letter at a time, and they'll say those letters and hold on to those letters only one at a time. So if they were spelling cat, they would see cat, B, A, where other students might be able to see that term cat and write the entire term down. They have a difficult time learning cursive. So manuscript is difficult, cursive is very difficult as well. And then they have letter reversals after grade 1. And really into grade 2 and grade 3, we start to become concerned. At this time, Jen is going to hand out our simulation activity. This is a non-dominant hand activity that we're going to take you through so you guys can experience what it's like to perform writing tasks as somebody with dyslexia would be experiencing these on a day-to-day basis. These activities require you to use your non-dominant hand to perform pencil paper tasks. It simulates a problem with writing caused by the lack of automaticity in letter formation. So it just doesn't come automatic. Handwriting is not functional until letter formation becomes automatic. So really, if you're still learning how to form the letters, it's very tedious and very exhausting for kiddos. Evidence of these problems might include slow and laborious handwriting, frequent self-corrections, write-overs, or false starts. Okay, so your page is turned over. Raise the hand that you normally would write with. Okay, pass your pen to the other hand. She did it last night. She's pardoned. You will not be writing with this hand for the next few activities. We're going to really experience this. So we're going to start with, as you turn your page over, we're going to start with number 1, and that's creating designs. You're going to copy these designs as quickly and as neatly as you can using your non-dominant hand. I will tell you when to stop. You can go ahead. Yes. And imagine a teacher is coaching our students on performing these tasks. Oh, nice handwriting, Rachel. Oh, Bob, I see you're really paying attention to the detail. Thank you. Oh, Jennifer is working very nice and fast. Brandy, you're paying attention to the task. Great job. Okay, please stop and turn your page over. This next activity will involve writing the alphabet. We're going to start writing the lowercase alphabet and then move to our uppercase, our manuscript, and then we're going to write in cursive. And so when I tell you to turn the page over, we will start. Go ahead and turn the page over. Start again. On number 3, you're going to write lowercase manuscript print using your non-dominant hand. Go ahead. Your alphabet? Yeah, lowercase. Again, imagine a teacher coaching these students to do their best work, to have neat handwriting, complete the task quickly, automaticity, finish up, you can move to cursive. David's doing a very nice job over here. Thank you, David. We can start to see how laborious this is when it is your non-dominant hand. Things that we take for granted are very difficult to our kids with, that are functioning with dyslexia. All right, you can stop there. Number 4, we're gonna just do one more with our non-dominant hand. We are gonna trace the design on number 4 using our non-dominant hand while counting from 975 to 1032. Out loud. This task now compiles the expectation to multitask. Okay, go ahead, have fun with this one. Good job. Try to stay on the lines. Please continue to count out loud. Good. Right. Don't get distracted, please, by your peers sitting next to you. All right, you can stop there. You can see how complex these tasks become and how exhausted you are right now, and you've just participated for 3 to 4 minutes completing tasks that really, we're asking our students with dyslexia to function on a daily level for 6 hours a day. So that can be very challenging.
So we're going to continue talking. If you can just turn your paper over, you won't need it for a little bit, and we don't want to have anybody, racing ahead and getting ahead of the rest of the class. We're going to continue talking about some other warning signs that we might notice of kids, primarily at the elementary level. So first, we're going to talk about analog clocks. And analog clocks, while I realize are becoming a thing of the past, kids who are dyslexic have a great difficulty telling time on an analog clock. They might be able to look at the face of the clock and be able to give an o'clock time or a 4:30 time, but anything that involves the language of quarter after, 10 minutes before, something like that, they will easily get the hands confused as well. Just becomes much more difficult. Sometimes what ends up happening in homes is parents will resort to getting their child a digital clock so they will know what time it is. And while that does solve the problem of knowing that time, still when a child looks at a digital clock and you call them up and say, I'm going to be there to pick you up in 10 minutes, they have no idea what time it will be in 10 minutes. So telling time can be difficult for them. Staying along in the area of math, kids who are dyslexic have great difficulty memorizing. So when we're asking them to memorize addition facts, multiplication facts, any kind of fact or sequences, how to solve long division, when we're asking them to memorize those steps, that can be very, very difficult for them. Likewise, with math, kids who are dyslexic often can see the math in their head. So when they're asked to show their work on their paper, they have no idea really what that work looks like. They see it spatially in their head, but again, they don't know the process or the sequence that they've really gone through to be able to show work on paper. They have great difficulty learning sight words, and in schools, our sight words are those high-frequency words that often don't follow the phonetic approach to reading. Words like said, S-A-I-D. They can see them over and over again, and that's one of the very early sight words that kids learn to read when they're talking about, when they're reading books that have dialogue in them. But it can be a word that they continually have difficulty remembering, or they might see it on one page and know it, and on the next page it's like they've never seen the word before. So it's very inconsistent, and it takes them a great deal of time to learn them. The other thing that they'll often do is they'll see the beginning and the ending of the word, say the word is horse, and they might substitute house. Beginning and the ending match, but the middle doesn't. So that's very common as well. And probably one of the areas that most teachers first recognize for kids who are dyslexic is they are horrific spellers. Not just, they didn't study for their test spellers, they really have horrific, terrible spelling. They'll write words the way they hear them, which again often means vowel sounds are missing. So it's very consonant rich and vowel poor. It's very difficult. Going back to the example that Rachel had given, even for copying, words that they might otherwise know in reading in terms of spelling, they don't even know how to approach it in terms of being able to spell it. And then finally, probably one of the pieces that we started out with that's what we most commonly think of when it comes to dyslexia is that slow, choppy, and inaccurate reader. And that's very, very true, but it's true because of all of these warning signs and all of the ways that the brain is trying to decipher what it's seeing, what it's hearing, what it needs to express, what it needs to write as well. Many times kids, they ignore punctuation, so the phrasing of a sentence doesn't sound like it otherwise would. And often what they're hearing from their teachers, because fluent reading sounds like talking, is try to make your reading sound like talking. And they're so busy trying to decipher the words that becomes very difficult, which is a perfect opportunity for us to move into the second simulation. So as a class, this simulation is called Lines and Bumps. And what we know about letters that look very similar are all made up of lines and bumps, whether it's a P or a Q, a B or a D, they look very similar. So a child who's dyslexic is constantly trying to decide which side is the bump on, which side is the line on, is the bump above or below in relationship to the line. Okay, so today we're going to read a great story. Keep your stories face down until it's time for us to begin. But we have been working so hard on these letters, these lines and bump letters, that I know you're going to do an excellent job. So go ahead and turn your paper over, and then you'll have to flip to page 2 as well. And typically what happens when we're working on reading in our classrooms today is reading instruction takes place in small groups. So while this doesn't necessarily feel like a very small group, imagine that most of our kids they're really learning to read in small groups. But today is the day as the teacher. It's important for me to listen to your reading so I can make sure I know where I need to take you instructionally. So let's go ahead and begin with our story. And let's see, Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind, will you start with the first sentence, please?
Do I start from the left or the right?
Well, where would make sense if you were going to start a story?
Well, normally I would read left to right.
Right, but you're Rebecca Knutson,
And
the
yeah.
adult who knows how to compensate, right? So, as the kid, where does the story begin? Go ahead and
I
start
guess on
there.
the right, huh? With a capital letter. Once. Many. I don't know.
Sure, you know, Rebecca.
Somethings ago, years ago.
Very
comma.
good.
I don't know. Something came to the village.
Rebecca, you did
Perhaps.
excellent. There were just 2 words there we need to go back and figure out. So, take a look at that first word. Get your mouth ready. What sound does the first letter make?
Oh. Or what? Like once.
The first word that you struggled with
Oh, the
there.
first word that
Yep,
I struggled
once, many
with.
years ago,
Eh.
Get your mouth ready for the first sound.
I can tell we're going to have a fun evening tonight. I don't know what that is.
Is there somebody
Is
else?
it an
that-
F, maybe? I don't
I
know.
think you're right. Get your
I don't
mouth
know.
ready for an F and see if you can figure out the rest of that word.
Fibble. I don't know. F-I-B-B. No, fiddler.
Very
Once
good.
a fiddler. Yeah, because there's no fibbler. That doesn't make any sense. Unless, I don't know, maybe that's a word. Fibbler?
Okay, and then what's the next word, Rebecca, right after
A fiddler came to the village.
Very nice. Now, can you go
Period.
back to the beginning? Make your reading sound like talking so it's nice and smooth.
Once, many years ago, a fiddler came to the village.
Perfect. Thank you. Christy, will you continue for us, please?
He stood in the village square and placed, I don't know what that one is, and sang.
Now, based on what you know it's something and sang. Can you go back and fill in that word?
Played
Very good.
played and sang with the people, came to listen and to dance.
Okay, now, Christy, listen to how you read it. You tell me if this makes sense, okay? He stood in the village square and played and sang with the people came to listen and to dance. Did you notice anything?
Yeah, I went to the far right. Maybe should have just dropped down.
Well, there was just one word there that broke the comprehension in our story. You said with, and that word is really until. Can you find that word until and frame it with your fingers?
Yeah, until.
All
My
right, let's
bifocals are failing me.
let's continue on with our third sentence. Jeff, would you read the third sentence for us? No. I know you can. You're a smart man.
Which one are we on, the third one?
The third sentence,
A
yeah.
jolly, oh boy,
Get your mouth ready for the first sound. What does that first sound make? Can you tell me the name of that letter?
that would be a D or a P.
Gosh, yep, think about those lines and those bumps.
Yeah, it's a B, a P, or a D.
Okay, I'm gonna help you with that one. That's a B. What sound does a B make?
B.
Okay, now think all the way through that whole word. What could that be?
Why did I get this sentence? I had the first one perfect. I really can't tell. I don't
All
know.
right, that word is butcher. Do you know what a butcher is?
Oh, yeah, now I can tell. It's a butcher.
Yeah. All right, go ahead and continue for us.
Butcher, that next one's going to be trouble, too. I'm crushing under the pressure.
Would you like to ask a friend to help you?
Yes, I'd like to ask, well, I was going to ask my friend Linda, but Jim, you're my friend, too, so dance. He danced with the... Oh, milkmaid. Yeah, that was, yeah, I can tell that
All
was
right.
milkmaid.
Good, teamwork is great.
It's
Good for
great,
you.
yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next sentence. Dinah, how about the next sentence, please?
A small boy skipped. Oh, yeah, see, I got it all the way till now. I had it. She's watching. A small boy skipped something the crowd
What would make sense there? A small boy,
skipped.
something the crowd. Get your mouth ready for those first sounds.
Well, it looks like a T on my thing, but I'm
It
not
is, and that T has a helper letter. The next letter helps it out, makes a different sound when they're together.
Oh, TH. Through the crowd, a small boy skipped through the crowd with his dog. Nipper? No. Dog. That looks like an N-I-Q, so it could. What? Not a Q. P, yeah, nipper. Well, that's what nipping at his heels. Is that an? Wait, okay, so
What
a
else
small
do dogs
boy
do besides nip?
nipping at his heels. I want to say bark, but that's not bark.
Oh, but it could be. It's something that means something similar to bark. Get your mouth ready for that first letter.
Rebecca, so where are my helpers? Yapping. Oh, well, there's a word, but and yapping. Okay, I was the word before. And yapping loudly.
Okay. And that's where we're going to stop with this simulation. We won't go on to the second paragraph, so those of you that didn't get called on can exhale. But before we move completely away from this simulation, I just want to take a minute and ask you, who are the characters in this story? A fiddler, butcher, milkmaid, a boy and his dog, right? And what was it? We mentioned the boy. What was it that the boy did in the story? Get through the crowd. Now, I'll just take a step back to say I noticed that those responses came from people who didn't have to read out loud. Oh, Christy, you did. I'm sorry. So, Jim. All right, one more question for us, just to check in on our comprehension. When did the story take place?
Many years ago.
Many years ago. So just stop and think for a minute, though. We've kind of made light of it, and it's been an opportunity for us to kind of giggle with one another, but to really think about our students who approach reading. Now, keep in mind that when they approach reading, kind of to your comment earlier, Rebecca, it isn't really that they're seeing the letters and the lines completely reversed as they've been presented to you today. It really is visually. They see everything through their eyes the same way. But remember when we talked about those parts of the brain? It's this part of the brain that's trying to do the work of what's way back here, of trying to visually discriminate. What letter is that? Where is that line? Where is that bump? Which side? How high? And so when we're asking our kids to do those reading activities, that's very much how it feels. And why, at the end of the day, I mean, they're completely exhausted, right? One paragraph, that takes a lot of energy. And then for our older kids, when we're sending them home with an hour or sometimes more for those who are dyslexic of homework that they're continuing to have to work at that intensity.
What font is this actually printed in?
Well,
And-
it's
and is it-
purposeful font.
Yeah, well, it looks to me like it's got a mixture of both cursive and regular.
Yep, it
in
does.
here.
And really for the simulation, it's meant so it's not clear. It's very poor quality. It's not a specific font, but it is exactly for that purpose. So you really have to study and focus and try to use different parts of your brain as somebody who might not be dyslexic to really feel what it is to be.
You're assuming that all of us in the room aren't one of the 20%, huh?
Well, I mean, if one in five, I'm assuming there could be a few.
Indeed.
We are done with the simulations. It's exhausting. We completed these last night, and I was in your chair, in your shoes, and I did not want to be called on. I wanted to avoid being called on. I was helping my friends, saying, fiddler, butcher. And I was cheating because you want to support your buddies. And so, thank you for doing that and owning up and experiencing that. That's important. So in high school, additional warning signs are, in addition to the elementary warning signs, are limited vocabulary. Really not able to grasp or articulate exactly what they want to say using the terms that are age appropriate. They have very poor written expression, which is not all that surprising. They have difficulty mastering a foreign language, difficulty reading sheet music, poor grades in many classes, and increased chance of dropout. So to move into, Jen's going to take this slide.
So I just want to bring you up to speed a little bit on the work that the Dyslexia Task Force is doing. So this first part of the presentation was really to try and have a common understanding about what dyslexia is and what it must feel like to be somebody who is dyslexic. But all of our task forces in the Fargo Public Schools, anytime we're looking at making a change or adopting something new, we follow the curriculum review cycle, which is made up of 4 phases, and you can see them there. Assessing what's currently in place, designing, constructing, and then moving on to annual review. So just walking through where we've been as a task force up until this point. Phase 1 started in terms of being able to assess where we're currently at in the summer of 2015, so the summer before last, and a group of teachers from elementary and middle school came together to really talk about what kinds of things do we have currently in place in the Fargo Public Schools for interventions for students who might be displaying dyslexic-like characteristics. So they created a list, a matrix, if you will, of programs, what strategies are taught within those programs, the specific areas of reading that were the focus of each program, and then if there was training that was needed or if it was something that somebody could pick up and immediately begin to implement. So taking a look at what we currently have on hand. And then at that time we had a little bit of a shift in the facilitation piece of the task force, so there was a little bit of a delay, but then last winter in January of 2016, the task force started meeting again, and that's when we really started to align our knowledge about what dyslexia is, and the information that's been shared with you up until this point has really been a result of that work. So we knew we needed to come to some common understandings about what it is, about what it's not, about what it might be for some, and how that might not be what it is for others. And then also to dig into what questions do we still have? What else do we need to know? And as a result of those questions, digging into the research to try and find answers to those questions. So that leads us to this fall, and that's exactly what we've been doing is we've been reading research, we've been trying to find answers to the questions that remained, and as we've been doing that, also developing what are best practices when we talk about teaching children who are dyslexic? And what do those best practices look like compared to what we're currently doing in the Fargo Public Schools? We were able to answer many of our questions, as well as being able to identify what kinds of professional development do teachers who specifically intervene with students who are dyslexic need? But even bigger than that, what do all of our teachers need? What do they all need to know about this brain and how that works and how we can support children who are struggling to learn that language?
Phase 2 continues for us to begin to have that understanding this winter and into next spring to develop best practice for implementation. Really, we're trying to create a pilot that we could implement this following fall. Instructional planning would include if there is a screener necessary for us to pinpoint the students that are showing the likelihood of having dyslexia, to make sure that our assessments and our instruction and our best practices would be aligned to standards, to make sure that we are picking the best and most effective strategies for these students, whether it be in small group, whole group, instruction, to develop a sequence of how this would be implemented, what happens first, what happens next, accessibility, who has access to these interventions, and who is trained, what ongoing support would be needed, and then the process for monitoring a program. So when we implement a pilot, we have to gather data to make sure that it's successful and it meets the outcomes that we would like for it to meet. When we design a pilot, we submit it to the Teaching and Learning Department for them to give the approval to make any further suggestions or recommendations before we move on. We move into phase 3, which is conduct and analyze an instructional pilot. So given that a pilot would be approved by the Teaching and Learning Department, maybe with a few tweaks, the fall of 2017, we would implement that pilot with 2 strands. When we consider professional development, we're really looking at what professional development does that pilot group need, and then what professional development do all of our teachers need. How can we build that awareness of dyslexia, of kids that really struggle with that? And then along with that pilot is to make sure that plan is implemented. One piece being adherence or fidelity to the implementation. How can we ensure that it's implemented with fidelity? And also that data collection of the pre and the post data to ensure that we are successful in our objectives. And then with phase 3, after that pilot is completed and the data is analyzed and the pilot group looks at that, the task force looks at that, we would determine if we are ready to adopt or ready to reconstruct and try to put something forward in that regard. So the winter and the spring, we would submit that pilot data to, again, the teaching and learning department to say, here's how the pilot went. Can we move forward with a full-scale implementation? Phase 4 is that district-wide implementation. So you can see that there are checks and balances that we go to with the teaching and learning department. So phase 4 would be in the fall, and we would really look at a whole-scale implementation plan. So it's easier to really plan for that small pilot, and it takes a lot of work to plan for that full-scale implementation because there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of teachers to work with and students to look at as well. So district support we would also look at how do we support this implementation across the district and what support is needed. Phase 4 continuing on is we don't just stop with a pilot or the full-scale implementation. We're looking at that on a yearly basis to see, are we still successful? Are we still meeting our objectives that we want to meet? We use the data-driven dialogue really to analyze the data that the program would bring in, and we would adjust and modify as need be. And is going to take us into ongoing FPS practice.
So all the while that we have been trying to understand and make a plan, and then now as we forecast these next couple of years about where we're going to be heading with the task force piece of it, I think it's super important that we don't lose sight of what's currently happening in the Fargo Public Schools. What are we doing that really does meet the needs of all children, including those who are showing characteristics of dyslexia? And how are we intervening when they aren't responding to our Tier 1 instruction? So up on the screen are going to be 2 paragraphs that come from the International Literacy Association from their research board just this year. And probably one of the pieces that our task force really found some relief in some ways, because it can be a little bit overwhelming or somewhat disheartening when you're thinking and focusing on all of the struggles that children who are dyslexic have, is that even though children who might experience these difficulties, that ultimately they don't have long-term difficulties if they have that appropriate instruction and intervention. And then in addition to that, the second paragraph, the paragraph that comes right after this one in the article, is that according to the research from 2005, is there is no one intervention that is the right intervention for all children who struggle with dyslexia or who struggle with any kind of reading difficulty. But rather, it is the strengths of the teacher being able to really dig into the way that child learns and to find the gaps or the areas that they're struggling with, so that they can make those very expert and responsive decisions to that child's learning progress. So in the Fargo Public Schools, just this year, we're in our first year of implementation with Journeys Reading, and it's my understanding Lisa Roski, our elementary ELA facilitator, will be sharing with you in an upcoming month more about the program itself. But for the first time in the past, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years probably, we have a program that is very specific about teaching phonemic awareness. And phonemic awareness is the letters and the sounds you hear, being able to manipulate the auditory piece. It has nothing to do with the written piece. It's all about things like rhymes and being able to hear beginning sounds and ending sounds. And then once that's mastered, Journeys also takes us through a very specific phonics instruction that builds on that continuum of difficulty. So we've got a great new first year, just a few months in, reading program that really focuses specifically on those areas that we know kids who are dyslexic struggle with. Additionally, all of our classrooms, I think I mentioned this a little bit ago, are teaching kids the how to read as well as the comprehension portion of reading in small group instruction. So they're meeting with kids based on what they're able to do and based on the next steps that they need to learn to continue progressing. And as a result, many of the teachers are using models like the Jan Richardson model for reading. Again, being able to really decipher the strengths and what is known for that child, and also being able to identify, so then what's the next step? If this is the known, then what's the next step? So that each child is learning it at the rate that they need to learn and in the areas that they need. We have many opportunities for early literacy classes that also focus on small group reading instruction in that Jan Richardson model. And we were really, really blessed in the Fargo Public Schools to have student performance strategists at each of our elementary buildings who are amazing instructional coaches. And they are in classrooms daily, watching instruction, talking about instruction, modeling instruction, and really pushing those best practices for reading instruction forward. Additionally, I wanted to add, we have a great department that is very well versed in assistive technology, from things like text to speech, so the computer will read the text on the screen to the student, or vice versa. If a student is writing, they can speak their story into the computer and it will type for them. So many opportunities to support the reading and the writing process for all kids, especially those who are struggling.
Another layer of support that we have in our district is called the multi-tiered systems of support. This won't be new to you guys. We call it MTSS in our buildings. It's for students who are demonstrating below grade level proficiency on grade level standards. They would be brought to the MTSS team for us to really analyze what are they weak in, what are they struggling in, to drill down that specific area of difficulty. That team then builds a goal, determines a goal, aligns an intervention that matches the need, and progress monitors to make sure that that intervention is appropriate and completed with fidelity. And then that team would then again revisit those students between 6 and 8 weeks as a kind of a progress check, and to make sure that we are on the right track in supporting those students who do have difficulties. Some of the interventions we have available within our buildings are reading recovery, and that's for first grade students. The Jan Richardson, again, model for reading that Jen stated. Language, which is a curriculum that is multisensory approach, and best practice in the area of really having that phonemic awareness and the building on language. Linda Mood Bell, LIPS, and RAVO. And RAVO and language go together. RAVO starts first, and then language builds on that. Read Naturally and Read Live, Words Their Way, and Road to the Code are some great interventions for our kiddos that have dyslexia. Beyond that, when a student is not successful within our MTSS program, they're not responding to the intervention that we have. They're not successful in the supports that we've already provided. And so we start to begin to look at what a learning disability is. And that category is containing many specific disability or struggles in the areas of math, writing, reading, language processing. All of those are which really create a lot of learning difficulty within our regular ed setting, and can make it very difficult for students to perform in the classroom. A disorder is one of or more of the basic processes involved in understanding spoken or written language despite that average intelligence. So on the screen, we have some people that have been identified and come out and talked about having dyslexia. We wanted to highlight this because dyslexia is not a life sentence. We have people that are very strong in other areas. And despite their struggles, despite the having dyslexia, they've been very successful in their own way and overcome a lot of challenges. And within Fargo Public Schools, we offer many programs that help our students that maybe struggle in written language, reading, for them to shine or for them to stand out. And some of those programs are project-based learning opportunities that can be very successful in displaying 21st century skills, which is important. Our music programs, our art programs, our theater programs. We have CTE courses that really, again, align with 21st century skills. And of course, our extracurricular activities and clubs that can really help people feel like a part of the group. So at this point, our presentation is complete. If you guys have any questions, we'd like to open the floor.
Anybody have any questions or comments? John?
I was excited to see this on our agenda. I know several people in the community that have kids that have dyslexia and have been asking me, what's the school doing about it? And I said, just wait, I'm pretty sure we're getting something on this. And pretty much every question that they had for me and that I was going to ask has been answered in this. This was a really fantastic presentation. One thing I would like a little clarity on, when we hear a task force, this was an internal to the district task force. This was not a public sort of forum task force involving parents or community groups or anything like that.
Yes, those are internal. We do a call for or a want ad. So if you look on our employee portal, we just put one out yesterday for a early literacy targeted interventions task force. And they are teachers that we specifically look for reading recovery, ELL, that have experiences in the questions that we are tackling. However, in the pilots that Rachel talked about, sometimes when we put together a pilot and we will do a common assessment or a trial, we will survey students to the success of that as well as the performance data. Sometimes we will have conference time, there will be surveys for parents about the new curriculum, how that's working within the process, but it is an internal task force. I would say last night, the simulation that we had, you've probably heard of Haley's Hope. So we had 2 people from that organization come in and they did these simulations with us. And they have really partnered with us from the fact that we are trying to deal with it and we are really learning as much as we can to support kids because they're all our kids, whether they're seeking an outside agency or in our classrooms. So it's been a very collaborative effort.
Follow up on that. One thing, we see this slide up here with all of these people, like Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci. So this has been a known thing for a while. What is new that in the past few years it seems to have really exploded in the public consciousness and in the research?
You're right. It has been known for a long while. I don't know that it's had the title dyslexia until more recently, even though we see an image of Leonardo da Vinci and people from long ago. But knowing what they struggled with, and then as research developed, being able to reference back to, what has been written about these people, it definitely seems like that would be that exact crossover.
Okay, thank you.
I would add on to that just really quick. I think too that it's become more of a public label because we have people in the medical community or private sectors that want to put a label on it. And I think the information that they shared in their slide where it was the highlighted information is really important. So if you didn't read that, and a synopsis of that is there isn't one quick fix or one program for these kiddos. And it isn't about labeling or not labeling. It's about knowing our kids as readers in a small group, listening to them and diagnosing. And the only way we can do that is not buying a program or expecting our parents to go out and pay an organization. It's really about investing in our teachers and that they can diagnose and know how to react and to teach kids where they are. And they don't need a full program in every case. Jen started out by saying that it is a whole continuum. If you go to the doctor and you have a sniffle versus you have pneumonia, it is treated differently. Dyslexia can be very small and minor. You look at this check sheet and people panic. Like, oh my gosh, my kid has dyslexia. If they don't just have delayed speech, maybe they have a sibling who talks for them all the time. It doesn't mean they're dyslexic. So our teachers are who we need to invest in and not worry about the label.
Excellent. Anyone else? Dr. Schatz, you had something?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation, and I hope it was very educational for everybody to really understand what it is that we're working with. And these folks have been working hard to really, dig in and figure out where we need to go as a district in the future. And I think one of the issues with this particular problem that we see in young children and adults is that it has fallen outside of the categories of special education, if you will. And as you categorize what is determined to be a student who would receive special education services, this has not really been one of those things. And so it's kind of fallen outside of the realm of different things that we normally would do when we assess kids and then say, okay, well, that student has that issue. We provide this service. Now they get special education services and all those types of things. And so 4 years ago when I became your superintendent, over 4.5 years ago now, We talked about continuum of services with an MTSS process, K through 12. What do we do when students don't get it and they become at risk and failing and all those types of things? Well, you've seen over the last year or two that we've really addressed that issue, tried to look at what is the seamless process K through 12, and we're getting much closer. This is the next thing. This is the next thing for us to really tackle, and that's what they're doing. And so it might look like the timeline is a little bit long, but we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And in the meantime, you saw all the other things that we're working on, and it really does become an investment in teachers. I would tell you the other students that we know of that struggle is the autism students, the Asperger syndrome, and that's a whole nother contingency, a group of students where you've seen a lot of diagnosis, and that has been in the public eye quite a bit over the last few years. And so I feel like we're in the right direction, we're headed the right way, and that we will get this thing to be something where we're providing really top-notch services to our students. But we have to make people aware and do the professional development. I think that's the biggest key. And so I appreciate the work you've done, and great presentation tonight, and keep up the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are we ready to do this? Should we take a break? Are these folks here?
Let's take a break and then come back to those.
Okay, we'll take a short break. We'll be back about 6:32. Let's take about 5 minutes. back in session. Thank you. Next up, we have the strategic plan in action. Dr. Gross?
Great, thank you very much. As we continue to talk about some of the things that are going well across the system, each month we try to bring with you, or to you, some of our opportunities to celebrate. And tonight, we have both staff, principal, and students from Davies High School to talk a little bit about the inclusion classroom that happens within that building. It's not only there, but other buildings as well, but we're highlighting one building tonight with the staff, students, and principal. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patty Cummings, who's our Director of Special Services, and she's going to introduce the rest of the team.
Thank you. So as I sat and thought about what I would say tonight, as a program that's near and dear to my heart, and this picture came up, I asked that it stay. And one of the things that struck me is there any one word that you would use to describe those individuals on that screen? Successful? Any other words? Famous? Brilliant? Intelligent? Mine was creative. I look at it, I look at Walt Disney and the world he created, Einstein. And by the way, if you would investigate some of these individuals, you would find out that many did not do well in school. Einstein was kicked out of school. So Steve Jobs was told by his classroom teachers that he might want to think about something that, would be more in the industrial trades, and here he does a startup business. The reason why that this is a seg for me for our inclusion class is that we often think, I believe, individual society, that we need to take people and put them in a box. Now, don't hear me say that individuals don't deserve the best that they can get. They do. If you were around in school before 1972, you probably didn't see too many students who had significant cognitive impairments. If you were in the elementary, middle school around the 70s, then you might have seen them in the hallway occasionally. I remember a young girl who had Down syndrome walking down the hallways of Rossman Elementary School in Detroit Lakes Middle School, or Detroit Lakes, town of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. She had Down syndrome, but I didn't know where she went the rest of the time when she wasn't in the hallway. Do you know what I mean? So as we think about having individuals that fit into a box, it's very important and it's very good that our society has realized that students with significant cognitive disabilities belong in regular classrooms. There's no doubt about it. But one thing that we shouldn't lose is the fact that children with significant cognitive disabilities have their own world that's pretty awesome too. Sometimes the neurotypical world should come to them, and that is a bit of what this inclusion class does. So I proudly introduce to you Chanel Kessler and a few of her members of her class to come and talk about what it is like to run an inclusion classroom, be a part of an inclusion classroom, and why it might be a little different than taking students with significant delays and always seeing them having to fit into the world of neurotypical.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Kessler. Welcome to the best class you'll ever take at Davies High School. With me today, I'm going to have you guys stand up with me, are three of my former students that took the class last quarter. We have McKenna, and Ashley. And I'm just going to pass these around to start with. We're tall people. The reason why it's the best class you'll ever take at Davies High School is because you get to hang out with the best people you'll ever meet in your life. This is a picture of my students from last year. A few of them have graduated, but some are still here, still at Davies High School this year. So just a little bit about social inclusion class. Often there is distance socially between people with significant disabilities and those who do not have disabilities present. And this becomes more and more evident as we age. It's easier in elementary school levels and middle school levels to be included in regular ed classrooms. But as high school gets more complicated and there's chemistry classes and physics, it's harder and harder for students with significant disabilities to be included in those gen ed classrooms. So social inclusion is a class that's created to create that common ground so that students can come together and socialize and be together. So it provides the opportunity for students to mingle and work together to remove the barriers that prevents socializing with others. And then not only do my students get the opportunity to be around their gen ed peers, but students like the ones with me today also get to see persons with significant disabilities for how unique they are. And overall, this microphone is really throwing me off. Overall, exposure leads to change. I always say expose, include, change. That's what we want to go going forward. It's more about than just high school. After high school, it's the rest of their lives. And it's come from a place of institutionalization to inclusion. And we want to keep that momentum going where everyone is accepted and included in society. And it starts with the younger generations. So the mission of social inclusion is to create an environment in which all students, those with and without disabilities, have opportunities to build rewarding friendships with peers. Do I have to do it? Okay. So why do students participate? To have fun, to make new friends, to learn more about being a friend, and to make the community and school a more welcoming place for everyone. They learn more about disabilities, and they discover more about themselves, and they also explore possible career options. I usually have 1 or 2 students every year who change their career paths from something else to special education. So it's a great opportunity for students to experience as well. Here are the course goals. It's to promote the social inclusion of students with disabilities through the development of their social skills by participating in age-appropriate activities. That's my big one and my big challenge for the students of the quarter. And we'll get to that in a second here. To empower students with disabilities to form their own friendships, to create a better sense of sensitivity to disability-related issues, appreciate more diversity, and build a stronger sense of school community, and then to strengthen the leadership skills of students through this experience. So here is some examples of some age-appropriate activities, and this is something that I go over with all my gen ed students. We do breakout sessions, and I kind of go over things with students. So activities such as coloring, music, games, and puzzles can be very young and very elementary, but you can easily adapt that to something that is age-appropriate, and that's what I want to see in my classroom. Too often, there's just this kind of general idea that students with significant cognitive disabilities like young things, like Elmo, like to do play with young toys that are supposed to be for younger children, and often they like doing other things that are age appropriate just as much. So that's what we should be exposing them to, is music, sports, school pride, all that stuff that is age appropriate is what we should be working on with students. So each quarter I get a new group of gen ed students, and in the classroom I partner them up with students from the MI program, and they do one-to-one social activities for the quarter. These are pictures of my current social inclusion partners for the quarter. We do partner day activities. So about 3 times a week, they do things and socialize with students as many typical high school students do. They read books and magazines in the library, they go browse at the school store, they walk along the indoor track, they play the Wii. As much as possible, I encourage them to get out of my classroom. Go and get exposed to the rest of the school, because that's where I want you to be. I want us to be seen, and I want there to be a great sense of normalcy with, like Patty mentioned before, you saw the student with Down syndrome walking in the hallway, but then what? So we want to incorporate more into the school on a typical basis, so that following high school and even now, when you see somebody with a significant disability in the community, it's just like any other day. It's a normal thing. I would love it. I love it when my students will I encourage them to text with with their partners. The catch is, of course, a staff is always with them, but the catch is that they have to read whatever text they receive out loud to the student, and then they have to read out loud the typed response back. But I mean, it's awesome. I mean, that's a typical social activity that most teenagers do, and I want my students to experience that just like any other teenager would. And then here's just the rough schedule of the class. It's 1 period a day, and 3 days a week we do partner days, which I went over. I do 1 breakout session a week, which I give a formal lesson on different disabilities. We talk about the history of special education and kind of how people with significant disabilities were once institutionalized and now we're moving towards inclusion. And then we talk about the community agencies that offer services and the role of a direct support professional following high school, what they play in the students' lives. And then we also do group activities about 1 day a week. And this is different fun social events, including tournaments. I have 5 tournaments in my classroom that we compete each quarter with. The Hall of Fame that's getting passed around here. If the student and their partner wins, they get a picture in the class trophy, and then they also get to be in the Hall of Fame. We do a Wii bowling tournament, a tic-tac-toe tournament, a Connect Four tournament, a ladder ball tournament, and a beanbag toss tournament. So it's a great opportunity for my students to compete, which is really fun, and also to learn how to be a super fan, how to cheer, how to have good sportsmanship, and all that fun stuff too. It's a good time. The final project that I require students who are with me today are required to do for the class is to create a partner photo journal that they will give to the student at the end of the quarter. So I have some parameters that they must meet in order to get the good grade. It's basically a scrapbook of what experiences that they did over the quarter. Must be durable, it must be neat, have to have pictures in color. And the journal must focus on the specific reasons why their partner was a good friend this quarter. I also worked at North High School before Davies, and I have visited former students at their house just because I miss them and I have to see them. And the first thing that they do is they will come show me their room. They always want to show off the room. And then they get out their journals and show me their journals. It's a big deal. This is their friend. This is what they made for them, and they are going to cherish these books for many years to come. So now, we also have a page in the yearbook at Davies High School for the social inclusion class, and I'm going to let the students that are with me today share the impact that the class has made on them.
Okay, hi, I'm McKenna Rail, and I'm a senior at Davies High School, and I have had the privilege to be involved in social inclusion. This class has had a great impact on my life. I was able to gain friendships that I may not have been exposed to without this class. With this class, I have become more sensitive to the challenges they go through every day. And with this class, I have become more knowledgeable about disabilities, and I appreciate the opportunity to have taken this course.
Hi, I'm McKenna, and I'm also a senior at Davies. I had the privilege to participate in social inclusion this year, and being around students with disabilities has opened my eyes, and I've learned that there's more to life than we think. It's not about the money that we have, how big our house is, or the gifts that we receive. It's about the love that we receive in life, the happiness that we gain, and coming to school and seeing these students every day is honestly a big stress reliever for me, because I have had days that I come to school and I get a bad test score back, and I'm just so upset about it. And then I know that it's going to be okay because I go to social inclusion class and they put a smile right back on my face. These students truly push me to be a better person, and they basically force me to be happy all the time. I mean, being around them, you can't not be happy. They've opened my eyes to the meaning of life, and I couldn't thank them enough for the lessons they've taught me and the friends that I've gained in this class. Thank you for allowing me to share my impact with all of you.
Okay, my name is Ashley Matter, and I'm a senior at Davies High School who also had the opportunity of joining the class Social Inclusion. Social inclusion has impacted my life in many ways, including my relationship with fellow classmates, job outlook, and skills that I can take in my everyday for my future. One of my favorite factors of this class is how every student is paired with their partner, that they are carried out throughout the quarter. This gave me the opportunity to learn about my partner, Kelvin, so I could fully understand his needs and his communication.
Are there any questions?
That was on to Jim.
No questions, just absolute congratulations to all three of you and to you for having such an incredible impact on so many people.
Absolutely, I would absolutely second that. Anyone else? Yes, Rebecca.
Last year, Davies was one of my schools as a liaison school, and I participated in one of your classes. And it was just fabulous. It was a great opportunity for me, and I can't remember the name. I recognize some of the pictures of some of the kids that are in the class, and maybe, like you said, they might have graduated by now. But at least one of the gals that I talked to said that exactly she was changing. She wanted her career path to be special education. So I just thought it was a great way to, it provides us all with an opportunity to get to know each other and, like you said, explore career opportunities that might not have even, crossed a mind before. So thank you very much for your work, and thanks to you three as well.
Anyone else have anything? Yeah, I would just like to second all of that, and especially, the timing where we're talking about it's challenging sometimes to really fill all those special ed positions and to have people just have an idea of what that career path could be is fantastic. So thanks so much. This was really inspiring. Appreciate it. Dr. Schatz, did you have anything to add this time? Okay, great. We'll move on to staff reports. There was no one in the audience who signed up. Yes, no. David.
All right. I just have a list of a few things. November was pretty much a month of giving and paying back to the community. FEA hosted Gene Week middle of November, and we, throughout all the employees of Fargo Public Schools, donated over $3,400 to Christmas Wish 98.7. Of course, we did Fill the Dome throughout November as well, where students donated several items to the community for the food shelf. HMR did it in their adoptive school. They took their mentors and the students there out and bought presents and gifts for children at Churches United. Washington students did bell ringing in their own school, where the kids could drop change at their school before and after school, and that money was donated to the Salvation Army. South donated food for students for weekends and breaks, so they put packages together and they give their students that need food for the weekend. Madison raised money for the Humane Society in November. Ed Clapp made placemats for the Salvation Army banquet. McKinley, the adopted school, they have heat transfer, donated sweatshirts to all the kids with McKinley logo and stuff on there for every kid to have. And Lewis and Clark also has a winter gear come here room where students can go and get winter gear if they need it. And so I think it's just great to see the community and the students and the staff coming together to help everyone in the community to become better and to give during this time of the year. And then on a personal note, under Human Resources, I see Renetta Bowman is retiring after 44 years of teaching. I student taught with Renetta 19 years ago, and she was a big part of me becoming an employee here at Fargo. So I want to congratulate her on her years of teaching and wish her well as well. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And I love seeing, some of those have made social media and the news, the things that the teachers are doing in the building and the service to the community. Thank you so much. Anybody have any questions or comments? Great, well, yes, John.
Only because you brought up one of my liaison schools, McKinley. highlighting the fantastic relationship we have with a lot of businesses in town and the partner schools, and it's really successful, and McKinley and Heat Transfer in particular really doing cool stuff together, so.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you, David, and have a wonderful holidays. We won't see you till next year.
Thank you. Yes, you guys as well.
Thank you. Dr. Gross.
Well, thank you very much. It's hard being in this position to follow those presentations because it's amazing what is happening across our system. And it was a pleasure to be able to be part of sharing that with you. So I will do my very best to follow that. I don't think I will be as intriguing, but let's see where we go. Yeah. So what I'd like to do tonight is just share a little bit of information with you about the Every Student Succeeds Act, which has been given now the acronym ESSA, and people are calling it ESSA. So if you hear ESSA or ESSA, it's the Every Student Succeeds Act. That's the federal regulation or law that was put into place December of 2015. It is the law that replaces No Child Left Behind, NCLB, which originally replaced the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA. Lots of acronyms as we move through, but we're talking about ESSA right now. The reason I share with you the website that's here from the Department of Public Instruction is I think it's a very good landing spot for anyone who wants more information about ESSA. I think our Department of Public Instruction has done a very nice job of providing this information for everyone involved. And also the piece I want to talk a little bit about is the ESSA Planning Committee that I have the opportunity to be part of. Each state under this new act needs to come up with a consolidated plan in which they will look at how they're going to define standards, come up with the assessments for standards, and also then that accountability system within the state. So how is that going to change from NCLB or No Child Left Behind, where under that plan it was really how many students are graduating, what is your daily attendance rate, and are 100% of your students proficient on the state assessment? Well, there are some major changes that have taken place under this new act. And some of the changes really are a shift in power, where now the states have much more authority to make some of those decisions. The state has much more authority in how they are going to build their accountability system. So that takes some of or decreases that role of the federal government in K-12 education. Each state is required to come up with those high standards, and right now across our state our reading and language arts and math standards are being revisited. There is public comment that has been there, and our state is working on that. Once that is done, there will be probably a new request for proposal for a new assessment that will match those standards because they are now North Dakota standards. That will become part of our accountability plan, but only a part. And that's the part that I really like about ESSA. Is in the past, it was what is the percentage of students who are proficient on that assessment? Under ESSA, there are other factors. We have talked with some members of this board and members of past school boards about the opportunity for a growth model. And can we look at where students start on an assessment and where they are a year later? Under ESSA, that's part of the plan. And our state plan will have some type of a growth measure as part of how we determine what accountability is in the state of North Dakota. In addition to that, we also know that there are many other factors that make a quality school system. And under ESSA, every state is required to have at least one additional factor. We are a work in progress as a committee, and we don't have a final recommendation. But really what we're looking at are two potential pieces for that other factor. One is looking at student engagement, and are our students actively involved in the classroom on a day-to-day basis? And as a committee, like I said, a recommendation hasn't been made yet, but we're looking at things that maybe we're already doing. Across the state of North Dakota, most of the districts are advanced ed accredited or working towards advanced ed accreditation. There is a tool called Elliott and that stands for Effective Learning Environments Observation Tool. I had to write that one down so I remembered what that was. That really goes into schools with teams of teachers and looks for engagement in the classroom. So it's a tool that's being used across the system. Could that be part of our state accountability system? This group, this planning committee, will continue those conversations. The second piece that we're looking at is climate and culture. And as a committee, we had some great conversations about what is the difference between culture and climate, because many times we talk about them in one breath, but really they're two different things. The culture, those rituals, those things that are happening in a building or in a school to make it the way it is, or the climate, which defines the quality and the character of the school. Do I feel safe? Is there an adult that's in the building who cares for me? And is there that shared vision and mission that we want to work on together? And as a committee, we're focusing more on climate than culture, and looking at different tools that we might use across the state of North Dakota so that there be some consistent measurement of climate. In addition to having new standards, an assessment, a growth model, and that one other factor, ESSA also talks about having information that is easily and readily available to parents. So one thing that we've talked about as a committee is the development of a school-wide dashboard. How can we put information out to parents? And that dashboard is really designed to be easily understandable and have real-time data. And one thing that we've looked at as a committee are examples from across the country, but we've looked at our dashboard that we have in Fargo as we talk about our strategic plan dashboard and how we really are on the forefront of providing that real-time data for the parents and our community members. I think the dashboard under this plan will not be as robust as ours because not every school, not everyone is at that same spot, but we're looking at examples like that. In addition, with ESSA, there are some changes between what used to happen if a school was identified as not making adequate yearly progress. In the past, a school might have to have sanctions placed upon them if that was required school choice or required supplemental services. Those things are gone and they are not part of ESSA. In place of that is schools will be identified that need some extra help. It might be those that are in the bottom 5% of performing Title I schools, or those schools that have a graduation rate of less than 67%. Or it could be that those schools who have been targeted because they have subgroups who are year after year underperforming the rest of the school. And instead of putting a sanction, the idea behind this is to put additional resources into those schools. That might be additional dollars, additional help, and additional support. Makes a lot of sense. So I think as we look at ESSA and the differences that it will make for the Fargo Public Schools and the other districts across the state of North Dakota, I see some positives on what we're doing. We're still saying that we need to be accountable. We're still saying that students need to be at certain levels. But we've begun to say each student is a unique individual. And that growth model, or that idea of looking at the growth from year 1 to year 2, more personalizes that approach. As we look at those other factors, we look at school is not just a test score. It's many other things that make a quality school and a school district, and that'll be part of this plan. We as a committee, and I bring you back to the website, if you're curious of who is on that committee, on this site, you can click, and in the spirit of transparency, all of the members who are part of this committee are listed, and it's a long list to scroll. You will see there are individuals from the regional education associations, from the college and university systems, from North Dakota United, from parents, the parent-teacher associations, teachers from small schools, large schools, and as I continue down the list, it'll be those principals from small schools, large schools, superintendents, and so on and so on. It's quite a large group. All of the work that this team has been doing is available for anyone to look at or review. All of the different meeting dates are associated or placed on the website. The agenda and the minutes are available for anyone to review. And because the task was so large in coming up with that plan, and the hope is by March to have the plan developed, you'll see that we have divided ourselves into 3 subgroups, from teacher and leader effectiveness, standards and assessment, and continuous improvement. Anyone can click on any one of those, and just like the others, you'll be able to see who the members are of those subcommittees and all of the minutes and agendas from their meetings. I think those people who have agreed to be part of the ESSA Planning Committee certainly are vested in creating a quality plan for our state. We meet approximately once a month as a large group and once a month as a small subcommittee. So the time commitment is there, but I think people are making the time because they see the importance of this as we move forward. At your table is a cabinet column that I wrote that was part of Journey and School Talk, just so that our community can have some of that information as well. Much of what I've shared with you tonight is listed there. But I just wanted to give you an update of where we're at and see if you had any questions.
Terrific, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Groves? Rebecca?
My work on the Native American Commission has led me to receiving input from folks regarding Native American education in our schools. And the fact that we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day now instead of Columbus Day, and the whole pipeline issue, just, that conversation has elevated in regard to the need for Native American education in our schools. And I attended a meeting last Monday that was sponsored by the Native American Commission. It was following our city commission meeting. And I said that I would bring up for discussion, I wanted to learn more too, what we are doing within our schools here in Fargo. But then also I see Scott Davis from the Indian Affairs Commission, is that right? And I guess I just wanted to find out what the best way is for me to learn more about how the interests of Native Americans are being addressed.
Rebecca, are you asking about this ESSA report, or are you asking for more information about what we do for Indian education? Because that's a separate deal. The second one?
So
Okay.
I was wondering about what you're involved in here in regard to ESSA. And at some point too, I want to learn more about what we do within Fargo schools. But how should I go about learning more in regard to the first question?
I think as we look about and the conversations that we've had, everyone on that committee, I think, feels empowered to share their thoughts and their comments and their concerns about what has been in place and what needs to be in place in the future. Things like, when we talk about graduation, is GED part of that or not? Because in some districts that may have, and I'm not saying all, but may have a large population of students, Native American students, EL students, and so on, GED might be the right pathway for many students. So we've talked about that and the connection to the different groups of students that we have the opportunity to serve. So I think all of us on the committee are trying to speak up for who we are there to serve, and that has certainly been done and will continue to be done. In the future, about what we do with our own Native American program, Melody Stabner is our coordinator of Native American services, and certainly she could come and share with you what we do, the parent group organization that is part of what we do in Fargo Public Schools, and some of the services that we provide, and I could certainly help coordinate that in the future.
So I think what we'll do is we'll kind of bounce that back to Dr. Schatz, and we can talk about that at governance, if that's a presentation for the future. Thank you. Anything else, John?
The assessments on here, and something you said caught my ear, saying that more than test scores indicate the quality of a school and an education. I think it was last week, was it the PISA international rankings of schools came out. Is there any tie in between that and what's happening with ESSA, or where do those assessments come from?
That's an international assessment that's done, and really there is no direct link to that.
Okay.
And so we could spend 4 to 5 hours on that one alone. And so if you want to talk more about that, we could discuss that, but I have a lot of strong opinions about PISA.
Sure, yep, and just because it was timely, and I was wondering if there was anything, but I
It wouldn't be,
definitely
it wouldn't be
appreciate that.
tied into directly to what they're doing with
Okay,
with
thank
ESSA,
you very
just so
much.
you know, yeah.
Okay, we'll leave, anybody else have any other questions, comments? Great, thank you for the walk through that and for the update. Okay, that brings us to mill levy update, Dr. Schatz.
Okay, well, I'll make this real short and brief because there's already been a lot of correspondence that you got last week and also just the work we've done this week too. This morning with the legislative session that we had with, I believe it was 13 legislators that attended that. As you know, we've been out educating people, 54 meetings up to this point. Everything that we're doing is right on time and things seem to be in order. Tonight, you're going to be taking action, hopefully on the first step in officially making notice that we're going to do the mill levy vote. And so in the interest of time, I'll just kind of leave it at that. And as you know, I'll keep updating you as we continue to progress with that whole process.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments on that? Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda, including the HR addendum.
I move the consent agenda be approved as written with the additional HR.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the items on the consent agenda with the HR addendum. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion approved. Okay. The special election resolution you have in front of you, Jim, as Chair of Planning, you want to do the honors on this one?
Sure. One of the requirements for us to move forward, as the memo indicated, we, many months ago, gave our approval to proceed with the March vote date, but now we're up against the legal procedures we have to go through to effectively make sure we're on time with the county. And as you'll see in the memo, they actually have to have an absentee ballot ready to be used by people come January 26th, which forces us to take action, hopefully tonight, to approve a resolution. So I actually have a motion I'd like to make on behalf of the committee that we approve the special election to be held on March 7th and adopt the attached ballot language resolution, which will read: the current Fargo Public School District General Fund levy authority is 127 mills. The current statutory general fund levy limitation is 70 mills on the dollar of taxable valuation of a school district. Shall Fargo Public School District Number 1 have a specified general fund mill levy of 127 mills effective December 31st of 2017.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second to approve the special election and the ballot language resolution. Any discussion? Jim?
Just one point for those that maybe weren't here the last time we tried to do this. This ballot language is nobody's favorite, but it's pretty prescriptive in state code. So I know Brock worked, I believe, with both the legal counsel from the State School Board Association, the county's officials in terms of making sure we're in sync with state statute with this language. So while it may not read the way we'd like it to, it reads the way it needs to for us to be legal and not have the outcome of that election challenged because of the ballot language itself.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. If you would please call the roll.
Ani?
Yes.
Benson?
Yes.
Goldenberg?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Rodenbiker?
Yes.
Ulrich?
Yes.
Boyd?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Onward with that process. One more hurdle down. The audit report, Jim, please.
Before I start walking you through this little booklet that I think everybody had an opportunity to read, I want to give you a little bit of an overview. We're being asked tonight to accept, receive, and file the audit report. We're not actually being asked to study it in depth and quiz ourselves on it. And as I thought about this, also knowing that there's something else going on later tonight, and we've got a couple more business items and another board meeting to still do before we're out of here, what I'd like to suggest is that we take a brief review of this so you know what exactly came from the auditor, take our action to accept and receive it tonight, and then my thought would be, for those that have in-depth questions or really want to learn more about how to read it, I'm going to put it on the planning committee agenda so we can really have a free-flowing discussion without feeling like we're jammed on time. So that's just kind of an FYI on where I intend to head with this after we hopefully accept it and receive it tonight. I would like to start by moving you all the way towards the back of this document to page number 67, because like any good book, if you go to the end, you usually get the whole story in short order. And on page 67, we have the start of the notification from the state auditor, Robert Peterson, that basically as they looked through all of our financials, during the audit, they did not identify any deficiencies in our internal controls that they would consider a material weakness. That's actually the last paragraph under internal controls over financial reporting. The very last line on page 67, the result of our test disclosed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under GASB, Government Auditing Standards. That is a very good thing to see in this report. If you flip to the next page, page 69, at the very bottom of page 69, they give their opinion in terms of Fargo Public Schools complying in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements required for all of the federal major programs that we're involved with. Going over to page 70, and it would be the bottom of the third paragraph in the first section, they did not identify any deficiencies in internal control over compliance that they would consider a material weakness, and none were identified for us to make any corrective actions on. And then finally, the last paragraph, and this is, if you're not a CPA, probably doesn't make much sense to you, but we are getting an unmodified opinion, which is exactly what Brock and his team wanted to see. An unmodified opinion means they think everything was fairly stated, accurately represented, and no modifications were being recommended by them to our financial statements. And the very last sentence on page 70, in our opinion, the schedule of expenditures of all federal awards is fairly stated in all material respects in relationship to the financial statements as a whole. Page 71 is the page that Brock likes to frame, or should like to frame and put on his wall, although he's got a team that helps him make this happen. And seeing everything as none reported is exactly what we as the school board want to have the auditors come back and tell us. So basically we got a clean report card on all of the financials, and if you read the detail, which I'm sure some of you already have, they actually thanked the Fargo Public staff for their assistance in working through the audit process with them. I want to highlight just a couple of other things in the actual data that I thought were kind of worth noting. Doesn't mean they're the only important ones, but they're ones that I think we all want to pay attention to. If you go to page 4, and what starts on page 4 and goes for several pages is really our report to the auditors on what's happened in the district. written primarily, well, Brock is taking credit for it in the document, but I'm sure he had some assistance from his team. So this is really our discussion of the financials. The backside where we went through is the auditors, reference to what they saw and what they felt was the case. But there's a couple of highlights that they point out here on page 1, or page 4 rather. I'm actually going to show you where those show up and really kind of point out why they are the highlights that jump off the page for this particular year. If you'd flip over to page 9, you will see a breakout of basically all of the net costs of providing Fargo Public Schools what they refer to as governmental activities. I'll call that educating the students of Fargo Public Schools. And one of the things that jumps off the page at first blush when you look at it is we actually spent less in 2016 educating our students than we did in 2015. Now this is really being driven by two primary things, and if you look at the sublines, you'll see them. First one is operations and maintenance. In 2015, we expended $16,306,000, and in 2016, we dropped that by almost $1.5 million to $14.8. And that was a function of really working through the plan that Brock and Jim Free's team has put together to really make sure our maintenance schedules are on track throughout all of our buildings. The other area, we took some action in the food service area to try and corral expenses as much as possible. And in part, that was, we had some expenditures from new buildings opening up in 2015, but we had a drop there of almost $800,000 of operating costs as well. So those were the two primary drivers that actually brought us in with lower expenses for 2016 than we had in 2015. Fund balance is always an interesting subject we hear a lot about, and if you jump over to page 13, you get a really good look at really a 10-year history of the general fund balance on one page. As you can see at the top of the data, in 2006, we had an ending fund balance of $25,718,000 and change. At the close of 2016, that number is at $30,185,000 and change. So we went up slightly from 2015 as far as the hard number goes, but probably more important for us as the stewards of trying to figure out how to run this district without having to borrow in the short term is actually the bar chart underneath. While the actual fund balance is greater than it was in 2015, it's actually a smaller percentage of our general fund because our general fund itself has been growing over this time. So we closed 2016 at 20.34% as an ending fund balance. Our target number is 15% or greater, so we're obviously in compliance with that. But it tells us we have, if necessary, the ability to do some one-time expenditures out of our fund balance and not impact our ability to cash flow the district without borrowing money. So that was a very good sign as well. One last thing I want to point out, just because it's one of the things I have total faith that everybody that said this in Bismarck is going to maintain it and never tell us something different, happens on page 16. As you are all aware, our employees are eligible either for TFFR, which is the Teachers Fund for Retirement, or PERS, the Public Employees Retirement System, depending upon their job classification. Neither of these pension plans do we control, nor do we have the ability to change them. Our employees are automatically included in them. From 2015 to 2016, we have been informed by the state that we needed to increase our net pension liability from $128,827,205 to just a small number, $153,750,000 $893. So I'm here to tell you there really is no fund balance. There is an unfunded liability that thus far the state is not telling us they're going to come collecting. But rest assured, they do have the ability, if something was to change, to come knocking on our door and ask for these dollars in the future. I don't anticipate that happening, but we are now, because somebody finally noted that the pension plan is actually underfunded, we, for the last, I believe, 2 years in our financials, are now having to record this net pension liability that, quite frankly, we don't control. And it actually increased what would appear to be our outstanding debt obligations or long-term liabilities by almost $25 million. So even though we're doing things pretty well in maintaining our debt, we're going to talk about that in the next action and trying to hopefully get a bond refund to save us some money. This is one of those unknowns that's just going to keep creeping up and up and up unless there is some legislative fix that happens. As our staff gets paid more, their pension benefits go up, and the net pension liability, unless the pension fund can grow the rate of return on assets at something greater than it has, will increase in future years as well. So just be aware of that. But again, it's not a liability we anticipate having to actually come to grips with paying in any near-term future. So with that, I would like to put forward a motion that we accept, receive, and file the audit report as presented from the State Auditor's Office for calendar year 2016.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to receive and file the audit report. Any questions or comments? David?
Madam President, Jim or Brock, on page 4, it states that there's a combined funding end balance of $53,800,000, and then we've got the $30,185,000. What are they referring to on page 4?
If you jump over to page 20. If you jump to page 20, we have more than one fund balance, okay? The 30 million that we looked at is our general fund. If you go to the bottom of page 20, you see the fund balance columns. Inventory actually shows up as part of a fund balance number, 200,000. Toilet paper, I don't know what else it would be, but whatever inventory we have in the central warehouse. We have $27 in our debt service fund, which is just an interest-bearing account. In fact, I had questions today on why this is even showing up in the report, but it's a short-term place that bond money is held until it's paid out, and it earns interest. We had $21,333,000 in our debt service fund, which is really the building fund. We also move an additional levy over to the building fund if it is not expended, so that's where that fund balance comes from. And we have a special reserve on the food service side of $2,350,000. Then you see the unassigned amount, which is referenced back on page 4, and that gets you to your total of $53,879,506, which matches up with the number you're seeing over there on page 4. So it's just looking at our other balances in addition to the general fund.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Anne Marie, if you would please call the roll.
Benson?
Yes.
Goldenberg?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Rodenbiker?
Yes.
Ulrich?
Yes.
Ani?
Yes.
Boyd?
Yes, and Jim, thank you for putting this on the planning agenda for those who'd like to dig a little deeper. Appreciate that. Brock?
Madam President, members of the board, just briefly, and Jim touched on it a little bit, a couple of acknowledgements. First of all, to the planning committee, Jim and his leadership and the whole planning committee. We manage a large budget. We get a lot of great guidance from the planning committee. We work through that on a regular basis, so I certainly appreciate that. And Jim referenced our accounting team at Fargo Public Schools. You've got 2 CPAs on staff, namely Jackie Gapp and Patty Richards. They do a great deal of the heavy lifting when the auditors are here. I get to come here and take a lot of credit for what happens with our finances, but we've got an outstanding accounting department with highly credentialed individuals that do great work, and I think it's really their work that gets us the recognition that we deserve in the audit, so I want to make sure that they are getting the appropriate credit for that as well, so thank you.
Great, and please pass along our appreciation for all their good work. It's always a pleasure to see that squeaky clean report every year. So, thank you. Bond refinance, Jim, please.
I think everybody's somewhat familiar with this process, but from time to time, we look out at all of our outstanding debt obligations, work with our bond counsel and bond advisors to see if in the marketplace there's any refinance opportunities that can save us money. And we have another opportunity to do just that. This is kind of a two-step dance card, though, because the bonds that have an opportunity for us to save some interest expense on are really issued by the building authority, and then we make lease payments to the building authority as the school board, and those debts are then extinguished from the building authority. So assuming we approve this action as a school board, it's why following this meeting, we're going to have a special meeting of the building authority to take the corresponding action, the second step of this dance to make this happen. Long story short, we have some lease revenue bonds, Series 2009, and some lease revenue refunding bonds, Series 2009B, that based upon what we anticipate we'll get back once this goes out to market, we'll end up saving the district about $190,000 in future interest cost. Not a huge amount of savings, but that's probably a couple classroom teachers, and it's actually almost $200,000, which is a lot of money to me. We won't know the exact amount, obviously, until we take these actions. Then we put these bonds out for bid. Right now, the anticipated date for bid opening would be January 24th. So this action, should we choose to do it tonight, and subsequently at the building authority we choose to do it, doesn't guarantee that we're going to issue these bonds. We will have to take action again on January 24th once we actually see what bids come back in, because if they come back in and we're not saving money, we at that point in time won't accept them. But we're not anticipating, bond counsel's pretty confident that we'll see a savings somewhere in the $190,000 range, give or take a little bit from there. So with that, I'd like to make a recommendation that we authorize the issuance of the Building Authority Lease Revenue Refunding Bond, Series 2017, and authorize the preparation of necessary documents and adopt the accompanying resolution providing for the public sale of $9,190,000 of Fargo School District Building Authority Lease Revenue Refunding Bonds, Series 2017.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. The recommended motion. Any questions, comments? Anne Marie, if you would please call the roll.
Goldenberg.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbiker.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ani.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes, motion carried. Thanks, and thanks to planning and Brock and Jim for keeping their eyes, as always, on that. We are up to monitoring of EL 10. Thank you, everyone who filled this out. There were no comments. I'd entertain a motion to accept and file.
I move to accept and file EL 10 as written and recorded.
Second.
Motion and a second to receive and file the monitoring EL 10. Anne Marie, if you would call the roll, please.
Johnson.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbiker.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ani.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Goldenberg.
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes, motion carries. I'd like to consider the GP changes all together. If, Anne Marie, would that be kosher? Copacetic? Okay. They're very minor changes, just clarification of language. As you see, GP 6, just giving a little leeway as to the exact meeting when we actually do that action. GP8, again, just putting a bit of flexibility in there. And GP14, when it talks about debriefing when board members attend meetings, that we just wanted our policies to now reflect actual practice where we fill out those reporting forms. So if someone would make a motion to accept those changes?
I move that we accept the changes as presented for GP6, GP8, and GP14.
Second.
Motion is second for GP6, 8, and 14 policy changes. Anne Marie, if you would call the roll, please.
Knutson?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Rodenbiker?
Yes.
Ulrich?
Yes.
Ani?
Yes.
Benson?
Yes.
Goldenberg?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Boyd?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Now we will have the tweeting of committee reports. We'll start with John Rodenbiker.
I was able to attend the McKinley and the Longfellow PTA meetings in December, and really nice to see what's going on with those schools.
Thank you.
I guess with the McKinley one, Dr. Schatz, we had met with their president with the presentation. Did they ever request you come back to present to the full PTA?
No.
No, okay, thank you.
Jennifer.
That's the shortest tweet ever. Okay, so just a quick communications update. We met on Monday and we spent some time talking about the follow-up question around timeliness, or how often we would like to see an audit be done, and we agreed that this was sort of a to-be-continued conversation after the mill levy. So around April, we'll bring that conversation back to the committee. And then we spent the rest of the time at the meeting really talking about the informational items that the district has done such a wonderful job of putting together. So that's it, and you can see that really more detail reflected in Anne Marie's minutes. That's it.
Great, thank you. Rebecca.
I mentioned already that I attended the Native American Commission discussion last Monday. I was at Madison's PTA when Dr. Schatz, that was yesterday, when Dr. Schatz was there to talk about the mill levy. And thank you to everyone that was at the meeting this morning with our legislators, and to the legislators that showed up, and Dr. Schatz and Brock and Linda, but Dr. Schatz and Brock for all your detailed information. So valuable for those that were there and able to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you for chairing that effort, and it went very well, and thank you for everyone for attending. That was very impressive that we had 100% attendance this morning, so appreciate that. Jim?
Planning met. You've already been subjected to most of what we talked about, the audit report, the bond refunding. We also, one of our charges is to review midstream how we're doing budget to actual, which Brock got us up to speed on, and everything's tracking pretty well. There may be some budget adjustments towards year end. We'll see how that all plays out. Also had a brief update from Dr. Schatz on the Workforce Development Center that's germinating and maybe going to take shape here in Fargo through a number of different entities. The next planning meeting will be on January 6th. And I also have an SEEC board meeting next week, and I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Dinah?
I attended the EdClap, PTA, and staff meetings since the last meeting with Dr. Schatz for his final presentations, and that's it.
Thank you. David?
Negotiations will be meeting on Friday at 7:30. I asked Brock to come and present a preliminary budget. You should have noticed in the consent agenda that we accepted the petition of FEA as a representative organization for the teachers. So we will see the committee members on Friday morning.
Thank you. Christy?
Just I attended the community communications meeting, the legislative breakfast. Afterwards, it was nice. I heard Shannon Rohrs talk about she'd heard the words before, but it was a good affirmation of what's been said. And then it's nice to see the community reaching out. Bob 95 is sharing for the next 5 days Bennett Elementary and Centennial Elementary music programs that were missed because of weather. So at 8:10 each morning, they will be presenting for the kids that have been working hard on their songs.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Brandy?
I will basically just say the communications and the breakfast. I don't have any other updates. Thank you.
Thank you. I attended the Fargo Dome Authority Social, which some of you did as well, so thank you for showing up for that, since we've been kind of griping about it all these years. Nice to see a good turnout. My report just highlights the Legislative Social, which is where we recreate this morning out in Bismarck and react to what adventures have come before us between now and then. So if you have not yet, please let Jolyn know if you plan to attend or not. And that's all I have. Our next meeting is January 10th. We adjourn, stay right here, and we'll do the Building Authority meeting. If anyone needs directions to my house, and everyone here is invited, afterwards, just let me know. So we are adjourned. We're adjourned.